as well. And we will share the recording via our YouTube channel as well as our website as well. As I mentioned early on, this webinar is brought to you by the National Association of Enabling Educators of Australia, or NAEA as we like to call ourselves. NAEA represents the enabling and pathway educators in Australia. We've got lots of information about what we do and other events and things that we do at our website, www.enablingeducators.org. Or if you want a quick access to it, you can scan the QR code that's sitting on the screen at the moment. We have our conference coming up at University of South Australia, and that's on the 5th and 6th of December this year. And the topic for that conference is reimagining enabling in higher education. And I'm been told that the submission for abstracts is still open, and I would encourage you to check that out as well. Now to today's presenter, Dr. Bronwyn Ralph is employed in the Open Edge Foundation program at the University of Newcastle, teaching the popular science for nursing and midwifery courses. In her role as the discipline cluster leader for the College of Health, Medicine and Wellbeing, she is responsible for ensuring the curriculum of Open Foundation courses in this area prepares students for success in the first year of undergraduate studies. In 2016, she was a recipient of an OLT seed grant investigating the curriculum design principles for enabling programs. And I'm sure Bronwyn will tell a little bit about some of those things as well. And she's talking about enabling curriculum. And on that note, I'll stop my share and I'll request Bronwyn to take over, please.
Okay. Thank you, Pranit. And welcome everyone, and thank you for coming along to this webinar about enabling curriculum. Before we start, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the people of the Worimi Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm situated today, and pay respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations from which our University of Newcastle students, staff and community are drawn. Just let me share. Up here, this is, so we're going to talk about enabling curriculum. If you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. I'm hoping in this webinar that it will be interactive as well. It's not just going to be me talking. I'm really looking for your input as well and to hear what you think, because you know, enabling curriculum, it is important to all of us. As Pranit said, I work at the University of Newcastle Open Foundation program in the Pathways and Academic Learning Support Centre. Oops. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? I'm just going to do a little bit of introduction about myself, where I've come from, how I ended up where I am, and then I want to talk about what is curriculum in the broad sense, then talk more specifically about what is an enabling curriculum, talk about some enabling curriculum principles, and then have a chat about where do we go now. One of my roles, I'm also the convener of the NAEA SIG on enabling curriculum, and I'm hoping that with everyone around here today, we can have a conversation about where we can go forward. All right, so who am I? When Pranit first asked me to do this webinar, we had a little chat yesterday, and we were both enthusiastically speaking about how much we enjoy being enabling practitioners and how much it brings to our practice. I guess along with everything, the teacher I am, the enabling educator I've become, is influenced by the educational experiences that I have had. My view of enabling curriculum is very holistic, and that comes about specifically from my first degree, which was in rural science at the University of New England. UNE in the rural science degree many years ago, they actually teach a systems approach that if you want to grow something, if you want to grow animals or plants, that you don't have to just consider what you need the animal to do. You also actually have to consider the environment, the whole environment in which you find yourself operating. That includes things such as the geology of the rocks on which the soil sits, the plant types that your animals eat, and also the economics and the economic climate and the markets in which you're going to sell, sell your agricultural product. So that really shaped how I view knowledge and how I view myself as an educator, in that the knowledge that I learn about, it's not just narrow knowledge. It interacts with many other things. It just doesn't exist in a silo. So this really encourages me to look at things as a whole rather than at a part, and how what might be happening in one part affects what happens in the other part. Doing a rural science degree also influenced where I consider to be spaces for education, because we didn't only just learn in the classroom or the laboratory. We learned out in paddocks, we learned in sheds and in other areas. I've ended up back at the University of Newcastle. I grew up in Newcastle, and I swore when I moved away to UNE, I was never, ever coming back. But I don't think that's something you can, now I don't think that's something I would say. I think because, you don't know what pathway your life is going to take and where you're going to end up. My pathway and my journey back to working in Open Foundation has had some disruptions along the way to where I find myself now. I was fortunate not to have any disruption to my education. However, my career has had many disruptions with having children, moving overseas, and having to take time off to look after sick children. All of these experiences, both personal and academic and through my education, have molded me to be the enabling practitioner I am today. I can't imagine working anywhere else at the moment, and so that's just a little bit about me. All right. The question I have before we start is, and feel free to annotate on the screen or pop in the chat, what would you like to take away or learn about enabling curriculum today? Thanks, Jan. Yeah, ways to improve my practice. Yep. Why is curriculum important? Thanks, Pranit. How to build in flexible assessment due dates. Yep. Yep. Learning ideas from people's practice. Okay. I'm just jotting these down. Rhiannon, yeah, what's distinctive about enabling curriculum as opposed to curriculum in general? Yep. All right, that gives me an idea of what, and I understand this is putting you all a bit on the spot, but I want to also get what you view. Thanks, Michelle. Okay. Let's start first. Thank you for sharing that with me. Oh, someone put a star on my page. Who is that? Okay. All right. So thanks, Jen. Let's move on to the next part. So what is curriculum before we start? So curriculum is derived from the Latin word currere, to run, or it also means a course or a racing chariot. The word curriculum in relation to education was first used in the early 19th century. Before that, that's when it was first used in relation to education. If we think about the derivation of the term curriculum, when you look at, it's to run a course or a racing chariot, it's not something static or passive. Just like running a race or completing the chariot race, engagement with curriculum, and curriculum is something that requires activity and perseverance to complete the set course, just like completing a course in education or in enabling education. If we think about it, both have a starting and a finish point and are of a defined length. And when we think about it in terms of education, you have content, you have your starting point of the content that you want to learn, you have your finishing point, but what you teach in between is set and at a defined length. Pranit, could I have that first poll question, please? So,
sure, just coming up now. There we go.
So before we get into the actual definition of curriculum, how confident do you feel about defining the term curriculum if someone asked you? All right, I'll end the poll now.
End the poll.
Yep.
Share the results.
Oh yeah, please.
Okay.
So that's actually great that I can see that, most people who answered are fairly confident. Could I have the second question, please? Next question, please, Pranit. Of the definitions of curriculum up on the screen, which of the following definitions of curriculum do you most agree with? Is curriculum the structural content of the course? Is it the planned learning opportunities that occur during a course, or is it the planned and unplanned learning opportunities that arise during a course? I think that might be everyone.
Yep.
Pranit, so we might
End the poll.
end the call. So it's interesting. I can see that most of you, some of you think it's just the structural content of the course. Some it's just the planned learning opportunities, and some people think it's also the planned and unplanned learning opportunities. Thanks, Pranit. As we go through, I hope you'll see that the definition of, curriculum is more about the planned and unplanned learning opportunities. I'll just end that. I can get rid of that. All right. So Owen Hicks in 2018, he's an Australian educator, wrote a really thoughtful article on curriculum in higher education. In my readings about curriculum, I tend to be drawn towards articles on curriculum in higher education, because this is where my students end up. And I guess this is where I come from. I've come from a higher education background. I use a number of different approaches in the curriculum design of my courses that I teach, the Science for Nursing Midwifery courses, including just-in-time learning approach, as well as Bruner's spiral curriculum. Hicks presents a widely applicable definition of curriculum that is based upon the imaginative curriculum project of the Higher Education Academy in the UK that I am personally drawn to because of its pragmatic approach. Hicks' 5 components of curriculum, as Hicks defines them, is what is being learned, Why is it being learnt? How is it being learnt? When and where is it being learnt? And how is the demonstration that learning is taking place? Like, how does that occur? So these are some things to think about as we progress to talking about what's an enabling curriculum. Another researcher from Ronald Barnett is a researcher from the UK who's written extensively on higher education curriculum principles, and particularly has written some really interesting work on the rise of the performative student, and related with that, how curricula have been, adapted to measure the performative student who learns content and subjects that will get them a job or into a particular vocation at the end of their degree. Barnett's curricular principles that he presents in his paper of 2009 are based upon the transformative nature of the curriculum, because when you engage with curriculum, when students engage with the curriculum, the idea is for it to transform them in some way. And he particularly says, that graduates, what he notes in his graduates is that when they engage with the curriculum, that this course has changed my life. So Barnett states that curricular principles should include content and should be such that it's sufficiently demanding for students to develop resilience, that it offers contrasting insights and perspectives to develop an open mind, that it requires the continual presence and commitment on the part of the students to develop self-discipline, and it contains sufficient space and spaces to encourage students to develop authenticity and integrity. We can spend a lot of time talking about the philosophy about what all of this means and where it goes. What is, I think, interesting about all of these is that these are based upon a higher education curriculum. When we look at a higher education curriculum in Australia, the Australian Qualifications Framework, graduate attributes of each university, and the accreditation requirements of professional bodies guide the development of the curriculum for each degree offered by an institution. The curriculum for each degree prepares students for a career in a specified discipline or sub-discipline. So, for example, most students enter a degree, they might enter a Bachelor of Medicine, they might enter a Bachelor of Physiotherapy, a Bachelor of Social Work, a Bachelor of Laws, a Bachelor of Business. The degree structure, the required knowledge, and the applications of skills and knowledge is closely related to the specific discipline of the degree in which they've enrolled. But what about our enabling programs? How do these principles that we've talked about and these components, this knowledge and theory, apply to our enabling programs? And what is the purpose of our enabling programs and the function of them? If we think about the enabling programs in Australia, enabling programs in Australia are diverse in both their structure and the content taught. Oops, sorry, there's a mistake in there. The structure can vary from being a year-long course. Courses can be one semester, they can be offered in weeks, offered on campus courses, as online courses, or as blended courses. The content taught can include academic literacies, study skills, personal reflection, and discipline-specific knowledge. Enabling programs themselves are multidisciplinary, and in many institutions, enabling practitioners come from different disciplines and teach into one program. So when we think about, I just want you to think about then, what subjects do you teach, are taught in your enabling program?
Bronwyn, do you want us to add this to the chat?
Oh, sorry, you can add it to the chat, or you can type onto the screen again. Why am I asking you to sort of include this? I just would like everyone to get an idea of, because our programs are so diverse, you know, we all teach different subjects. When you read across the literature on enabling education, you know, we have wide-ranging subjects such as CQU has positive learning for university. I can see, you know, people teach maths. Some people teach digital literacy. At the University of Newcastle, we don't have a core program. Sorry, in our Open Foundation program, we don't have a core program. We offer discipline-specific subjects with academic literacies embedded in them. Subjects such as the one I teach, Science for Nursing Midwifery. We have maths, we have sociology, and I can see that I can see coming at some, JC, you know, you have academic literacies, introductory science and general maths, humanities and science, for a range of disciplines. And okay, so there's as you can see in the chat, there's a wide range of subjects, and I can see people are adding things onto the screen as well. You know, preparatory skills for university, diplomas, we've got humanities. So we have a wide range of subjects that are taught within enabling. What do you think? What is the aim of your specific enabling program? You can either add it to the chat. For instance, thanks, Pranit, develop skills for future higher education studies and beyond. Charmaine, help students gain entry for their chosen degree and transformative learning, an academic pathway to higher education, prepare students for university level study. Sharpen their generic and transferable skills relevant for tertiary education. Selena, transferable skills to fuel knowledge and open doors that a student may not have been aware of. And I think Charmaine, prepare for undergraduate study. When I look at all of this, first year undergraduate courses that normalizes, discusses, transition, teaches academic writing and prepare for undergraduate study. So even though we all teach a whole range of subjects, the reason why we're teaching the subjects is to prepare our students for entry into undergraduate study. Which is great. I think it's the one thing about, even though we're incredibly diverse in what we teach, the why we're teaching is consistent across all of our programs. If you think about curriculum, first year curriculum in the first year of undergraduate studies, curriculum in the first year of undergraduate studies, how would you describe the aim of first year undergraduate studies. The curriculum for first year undergraduate studies. Again, you post in the chat on the screen. Yeah, most can be very rigid. Yeah, Selena, it's very discipline specific. Yeah, Elizabeth's foundational and disciplinary. So yeah, a foundation level of that disciplinary specific knowledge. Rianne, yep, an introduction to discipline knowledge, ways of knowing and research. Charmaine introduces students to their discipline. Now they're Lisa, to orient students to the discipline, yes, that they've selected to pursue, to introduce large concepts that are required in the discipline and to commence developing foundational knowledge and skills required to be developed over time. Yep, Selena, thanks, Anne. Yep, there's probably an assumption that students have skills for academic reading and writing and communication and discipline-specific knowledge and skills. And I can see that someone's added something on the page here. Can be more, sorry, can be some general studies. Is that general studies to the knowledge that will later be narrowed into the 3rd and 4th years? Yeah. So I think just from what there's a very, I think it was Rianne who asked what was the difference between first year curriculum and an enabling curriculum. All of a sudden, who was that? Yeah, I can see that. I'm trying to sorry, Renette. As you can see, immediately, just from what you understand the difference to be is that, you know, first year curriculum is much more narrowed, it's discipline specific, whereas in enabling, you know, we are preparing students for them. We're looking at ways to maybe teach them not only discipline specific knowledge, but skills and knowledge about how university will be, to give them the confidence and to succeed in university. There hasn't been a lot of, I'm just going to clear this. There hasn't been a lot of research into enabling curriculum. And there hasn't been a lot of research into curriculum itself in the last few decades. It has declined and has been replaced with research about learning and teaching. A lot of the research about learning and teaching, it actually falls under the umbrella of curriculum. In 2016, with Nicole Crawford, John O'Rourke, Sue Sharp, Barry Hodges, Robin Kataski Barnes and Mashud Shah, I led the OL2 project called Lighting the Pathway that looked at how the curriculum at 3 open access enabling programs was designed in Australia. We came for the project, our aim was to articulate the curriculum design projects in 3 open access programs, and we came up and we looked at curriculum in terms of it being intended curriculum, enacted curriculum, experienced curriculum and hidden curriculum. So basically the intended curriculum is what is written in the documents. The enacted curriculum is what teachers do, what educators do to transfer that knowledge to students. The experienced curriculum is what the students said they learned from the curriculum. And then we also looked at the hidden curriculum, all of those apparently intangible things such as time management, how to study for an exam, how university functions. We looked at the 3 programs we looked at had a great diversity in their curriculum design. One program was discipline specific, one program only taught academic literacy skills, and the 3rd program taught a mixture of both academic literacy skills and discipline-specific knowledge. The curriculum design principles we came up with from that small study was that enabling curriculum prepares students for university study. It is student learning centered and it has a holistic approach. So it thinks about everything that comes under curriculum. An enabling curriculum is explicit in that it explains what's going on, it's taught what is said, it's inclusive, and it establishes respectful learning communities, and it fosters transformative experiences. So when we think back to when we looked at Barnett and to Hicks's definition, these are very specific for the project we looked at. But from the information that you've given, that we've talked about today, you know, when we talk about what is an enabling curriculum, I guess the most, why, what is being learned in enabling programs? When we look at the common theme between what you have written, what's being learnt in enabling programs is skills for undergraduate study that prepare students for success and confidence in their undergraduate degree. They learn how to be part of the university as well. The why it's being learnt is, why do we teach this? To develop confidence in our students so they can be successful because of their disadvantaged and disrupted educational backgrounds they came to. How it's being learnt, when and why it's being learned, and the demonstration of learning is something I'm not going to go into in a great degree. What I would like, I guess, the last point I want to finish on, and then I'm going to open up for questions, Annette, I think, and some more discussion, is that how do we think about assessing our curriculum? When we assess a curriculum and an enabling curriculum, it's more than just curriculum mapping. Is what we write in our intended curriculum documents, is that what is taught? What is also really important for us as we move forward is the student experiences of the curriculum, particularly when they move into their undergraduate degree. That experienced curriculum, and if we think back here, what is being learnt, and that, what is important for the student is that they feel prepared for their undergraduate degree. So when we think about assessing whether the enabling curriculum design principles we've used for our courses are appropriate, not only do we have to map, do what we say we're going to teach, if that's what is taught and is that what is assessed, but we also need to think about how the student experiences that, and that, because there's no point teaching something if the student doesn't learn it. And that's where, I guess, where pedagogy comes into what we're doing. The NAEA has a set of learning outcomes, and just as in undergraduate, the content taught in the curriculum is based upon the learning outcomes for a particular degree. In our enabling programs and courses, these learning outcomes will guide the content that's included and the knowledge that is included in your programs. All right. What now for enabling curriculum? I guess I'd like you to think about, and what I've been thinking about in preparing for this webinar is where do we go as an enabling association? We have learning outcomes and we have lots of different programs that are teaching lots of different subjects. And we have some enabling curriculum design principles that have been tested in 3 programs. To give the program, the government wants us to show that these programs work. How can we, as a national association, define what, not define what is an enabling curriculum, not just for 3 programs, but for all the programs, and also look at an enabling program, what type of subjects may be included in it. All right, look, thank you for listening. I'm going to, that's a reference list for I think anything if people want it. I'm going to throw it over to questions and answers. Sorry, questions.
So as I mentioned early on, well, first of all, thank you very much for that, Bronwyn. I really enjoyed that. By all means, you are able to unmute yourself and ask questions directly, or if you're unable to do that, put that in the chat, and either Bronwyn or I will be able to pick it up. So there we go. Any question and answers?
I guess I'd ask, just to get people thinking about it, right back at the beginning of the chat, I asked everyone what you wanted to get out of it. So Pranit said, so Jan said ways to improve my practice. Pranit was, why is curriculum important? New ideas, what's distinctive about an enabling curriculum as opposed to a general curriculum? Michelle, checking in your views of belief about curriculum importance, consistency and continuity. In terms of what was presented is, I'll be honest, I've asked me a question. I think sometimes that's the easiest way to ensure that you get out what it was you want from the curriculum. Sorry, from this webinar. I'm a bit nervous if you haven't noticed. It's actually much more daunting to talking to you.
That's all right. Bronwyn, Rianne has put something in the chat if you are able to have a look at it. I think she says, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on whether enabling should be part of the AQF. Big question.
Big question, loaded question as well. I think, and this will just be my personal view, is that I think I would like to see it included in the AQF. What we do know is, I know it, look, I think it's difficult because it doesn't lead to a recognised qualification, which is what the AQF is. It's about qualifications. The trouble we have with enabling is it doesn't lead, to a recognised qualification. What would be nice if that it was included, because I think it's an important pathway to provide students with access to higher education that should be recognised for the effort the students put in. I think that will be.
Yeah. Jen asks, can you please give examples of unplanned activities?
Pranit,
oh, sorry.
Has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Who has the hand up? My apologies.
Maybury?
Oh, yes, go for it. Actually,
it actually flows on from what we've just been talking about, how the enabling programs vary. I've taught enabling programs in 3 institutions now, and they're not alike at all. So it was interesting to hear hear today's discussion. And then we led on to this point of the AQF framework and it not leading to a qualification. I've had 3 students so far in the last 2 years who've moved to the Sunshine Coast because their family has, and they have almost completed a enabling program in another institution. And then when they come to our university, they don't get entry into the degree with an enabling program from another university. So they've got to start again. And they haven't complained about it, but surely there can be some points of comparability or some agreement that we can come to, so students don't have to do 2 enabling programs.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really important point, Brit, and something that needs to be addressed. The National Association, there has been a benchmarking project that involved 9 universities. And what I would see is that, continued discussions around that benchmarking project, but also around what subjects constitute an enabling curriculum, and sort of maybe mapping and doing some benchmarking across all the programs to, maybe mapping to our common learning outcomes. And,
Yes, exactly.
and looking at how each subject at each university, how it meets, the learning outcomes, and also the curriculum design principles,
Yes.
to enable that transportability between. I think that would be something that is probably overdue. And as you said, you can do that for a degree. You can do that for, get recognition of prior learning. That's actually not something that happens with an enabling.
Yeah. And I
program.
think, I think you're right too. It is long overdue. And I think it would actually give our programs more, not credibility, but more, recognition, if we recognise each other.
Yes, and I think that recognition is very invisible, I think, very much at the moment. And so it's thinking about how we visibilise what the programs do and how recognition for
It
them.
doesn't matter how you package them up. The same components are still there. There's critical literacy, there's digital literacy, there's information literacy. There's and then there's all components that go around it: essay writing, scientific report writing. There's just a host of stuff that gets packaged in, but packaged up differently.
And I think that's where, like, when you think about that, that's those, components of, if we think about what we teach. So I'm just going to skip, Jan, can I just skip you for 1 minute and just segue into to Selena's question, which, because it just relates to this, how do I think the 4 curriculums still exist? Look, I think they still exist. I think in my mind personally, I think Hicks is more generalised, that general, more pragmatic approach to curriculum might allow us as an association to, make these connections, to really allow, each course, each program to sort of sit down and describe what's happening. So sort of, but also, to help acknowledge that is, look at how students do in, what is their experience, what, ask them what worked and didn't work when they get into their undergraduate degree. We're doing this quite a bit for my course. Well, we're doing it for my course at UON at the moment, and it provides a lot of feedback in how you change the course and keep it current. And that's because the reason why we've ended up with such a diverse, enabling curriculum, such diverse programs with so many different subjects being taught, is we're not in the AQF. We're not teaching a very narrow discipline. It's very broad. Each program has arisen separately from one another in response to
the local context.
In the local context.
Right, yes.
And because it didn't lead to, I guess because it hasn't led to a qualification, that there's been no need for it to be unified. But that diversity, I think, brings strength in responding to local access needs. Jan, unplanned activities of the as part of the curriculum. So when if you're talking about activities that are planned, that would be something, I guess, that you've got written down somewhere. So what is the aim, what content is going to be taught. It can be very much also around some of these unplanned activities, of what we classify, or not classify, that's my science background coming in, what are considered to be parts of the hidden curriculum. How do you manage your time? How do you take an exam? Sometimes students, you always go in with a set of learning outcomes of what you want to teach, but sometimes you might go off on a tangent that allows you to engage students, to teach them about an aspect of the university that you may not have thought about, that contributes to their overall feeling of belonging and success and confidence. Has that answered your question?
It's also allowing for the incidental teaching that can happen as well.
And that's those unplanned activities.
Yeah, that's right.
The analogy, so for example, it might be the analogy that you come up with, or so it might be the analogy that you come up with, or you know, a student might ask a question about how do I submit an assignment, or where do I find this? So, you know, or it opens the door for you to educate the students about something that, you know, just isn't content and structure. It might be about how, you know, how they can be successful at uni. You know, a student might bring up that they're struggling to learn something, so that might open the door, you know, to talk about time management. It depends on what I can only talk from my opinion, from my viewpoint, for teaching discipline specific content, with academics, with our academic skills embedded. But sometimes it's the questions that students ask that you don't think about, particularly during the pandemic. We had a lot of questions about how students were coping, and then talking about ways of coping that they could then use, you know, when it came to studying. Sorry, Jan, yeah.
Yeah. I've actually thought of an answer that's not from my teaching. I teach maths. But I run the peer learning program, our Pathways College. I've been doing so for about 15 years or something. And I coordinate about 30 casual peer learning leaders. And they have some peer learning sessions that are drop-in sessions. So I guess the activities that they do in those are not always planned. It can be led by what the students want. So I'm kind of partly answering my own question. And I was trying to visualize it in the context of an excursion. We sometimes do excursions to the local, we used to pre-COVID, excursions to the local botanic garden. And I guess you can get taken off on if you spot a plant or something, or you could get taken off on a tangent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had an example. It's just gone out of my brain.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. But you don't. But it's very much along those lines, in that a student may ask a question, because I teach anatomy and physiology. So they may ask. So I guess the best example that I can think of is that they may ask a question about a specific disease or something. And that then allows you to bring in learning, or to bring in concepts from another body system, or to talk to the students about, you know, how the course all relates, you know, together, and to get them thinking, you know, to prompt them to think about not just the material in its narrow, you know, as a structure or function in the human body, but, you know, to think about it more in a big picture, in a holistic way, about what this means. So it gets them, I guess, to engage, rather than setting out to teach like critical thinking or problem solving or making connections. You know, that unplanned learning, where you want them to learn how to think about how, you know, information connects together. If you try to plan that, sometimes it just never happens. But sometimes those spontaneous questions that arise allow you to point that out. Yeah, and certainly, yeah, peer support. And those, I guess, pulse checks to see how people are. It's part of what also makes enabling curriculum different, in that has that caring and making it inclusive. I guess another example would be, you want the curriculum to be non-judgmental. So whatever questions students ask, you know, is answered. You know, there's no question, you know, a student might ask a question about content that you don't teach, but, you know, again, you can answer that question, and the learning that comes around that contributes to that development of that inclusive community, makes the student feel cared for. It probably develops their success, their confidence in understanding the course material, because they've had a question that they wanted answered, and you've answered it. So it might not be might not be planned learning for the whole class. It might end up being unplanned learning for an individual student that then contributes to their understanding of the content. And you can't sort of, I guess, pick what they're going to be.
Sure.
Thanks, Margaret. Look, I
Yeah.
think does anyone
Yeah, we could probably squeeze in one last question if anybody has one, I think, isn't it, Bronwyn?
I think so,
I
Pranit.
can just on the way out, if anybody has any question.
So probably, can you hear me? I've got,
Yeah,
yep.
Charmaine,
okay.
yes.
Probably not so much a question, but a comment that came up about recognising each other's enabling programs to get entry into a degree at a different university. I think at some universities, and I know that at USQ or Uni SQ as we're now known, we do get asked by enrollments, admissions, and they say, is this comparable? This student's coming with this. Is this comparable to our enabling program? So there is that degree of recognition, I think, that's occurring across the country, and it's just a matter of formalising that, I think, is what needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, because I know our Open Foundation program is recognised at several different universities, and I think again it's that formalisation of it, Charmaine, which is because I guess my last question to everyone is, the NAEA, we have a SIG, where I guess the opportunity when we come together like this is to decide, to identify those issues that need to be looked at and probably made more visible, like the recognition, and see where we go to with that in consultation with the association. But if people are interested in continuing conversations about enabling curriculum, if you would like to discuss ideas about research projects that could be undertaken through the curriculum SIG across the enabling programs within the sector, then please get in contact with me, because I'd be very interested in talking to you so that we can have discussions with the association also about how we can visibilise some of these comments and issues that have come up today to help strengthen enabling programs within Australia. And look, thank you